In the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side, the Sterling estate stood not as a home, but as a gilded cage. To the outside world, Arya Sterling was the fortunate orphan taken in by her benevolent uncle. In reality, she was a ghost in her own life, a servant dressed in silk. For 10 years, ever since the car crash that claimed her parents, her uncle Richard had kept her hidden. He called it aristocratic seclusion. Arya knew it for what it was: imprisonment. Down in the damp silence of the basement, he drugged her compliance and broke her spirit, molding her into a terrifying replica of her late mother. But tonight, the cage door was left ajar. The estate was buzzing. It was the night of the grand masquerade, a desperate attempt to marry off Chloe, the family's vicious golden child, to save the Sterling fortune. Richard had plans for Arya, too. He intended to sell her off to an aging tycoon with a taste for breaking pretty things. Not happening, Arya thought, her heart hammering against her ribs. Hidden behind a loose brick in the basement sat her salvation, a sketchbook filled with charcoal nightmares and oil paintings so dark they felt alive. She didn't need a savior, she needed a weapon. She stole a backless gown from Chloe's couture collection black as a raven's wing and slipped a silver fox mask over her eyes. She vanished into the New York night, heading straight for the Void, the most exclusive, notoriously secretive club in the city. Inside the VIP lounge, shadows clung to the walls like smoke. And there, sitting alone in the darkest corner, was the predator she was hunting, Sebastian Vance. The Lucifer of Manhattan. He sat like a lion at rest, boredom etched into his sharp features. Bodyguards formed a wall of muscle around him, but Arya didn't hesitate. She pushed past a bewildered guard, her breath hitching only once before she stood directly in front of him. She didn't beg, she let her eyes, wild and terrified, lock onto his. With a steady hand, she placed a cocktail napkin on the table. On it, drawn in blood-red lipstick, was a sketch of a skull entangled with roses, a twisted, feral mockery of the Vance family crest. This sketch, she whispered, her voice trembling but her chin held high. In exchange, you get me out of here tonight. Sebastian looked up. His eyes were cold, assessing, stripping her bare. He had seen 1,000 women try to climb into his bed, but none had ever tried to negotiate their way in. Slowly, he stood. The darkness seemed to rise with him, engulfing her. He towered over her, radiating a dangerous heat. Done, Sebastian murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in her chest. But be warned, little fox, my price is steep. That night, in the glass-walled prison of his penthouse, Arya learned the true meaning of controlled freedom. Sebastian wasn't gentle. He unwrapped her not like a lover, but like a possession he had finally acquired. When his fingers grazed the old scars marring her back, he paused. The cruelty in his eyes softened for a fraction of a second, replaced by something unreadable, before he pressed his lips to the ruined skin. By dawn, the bed was empty. Arya had vanished like Cinderella, racing the sun to return to her personal hell before Richard woke. She wasn't stupid. She knew she couldn't just leave. Not yet, but she left a message. On Sebastian's nightstand sat an unfinished ketchup portrait of his eyes, heavy with lust and darkness, signed simply Valkyrie. Her return to the Sterling estate was met with violence. Chloe had found the missing dress. You filthy little thief, Chloe shrieked, the leather riding crop whistling through the air. It struck Arya's calves with a sickening crack. Arya bit her lip until it bled, refusing to scream. She stared at the floor, counting the strikes, 1, 2, 3, with every lash. The fire in her gut grew hotter. Hit me, she thought, her internal monologue a venomous hiss. Every scar you give me is just another line in your obituary. Richard, furious at her disappearance, locked her in the attic. No food, no water. Her punishment was simple. Next week, at the Sotheby's charity auction, she would play the role of the perfect, pure Sterling debutante. She was forced to submit a painting titled Cotton Candy, a pathetic, amateurish piece Richard forced her to claim to attract a wealthy suitor. Across the city, Sebastian Vance was tearing New York apart. Find her, he commanded. His head of security, James, placed a file on the mahogany desk. The dress belongs to the Sterling family, sir. That's Arya Sterling, the niece. Sebastian looked at the photo. The girl in the file looked meek, broken, eyes cast down in submission. He smirked, tracing the jawline of the girl in the photo. The obedient little orphan, Sebastian mused, a dangerous glint in his eyes. What a performance. You're a liar, Arya Sterling. And I'm going to catch you. The auction hall glittered with old money and pretension. Arya stood beside Richard, a porcelain doll in a suffocating white dress. She felt dead inside. Then the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy. Sebastian Vance entered. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. He didn't look at the art. He didn't look at the cameras. His gaze cut through the room like a laser, landing squarely on Arya. Richard beamed, stepping forward to fawn over the billionaire, but Sebastian's bodyguard shoved him aside. Sebastian walked straight to Arya, ignoring the gasps of the elite. He reached out, his finger hooking under her chin, tilting her head up. Did you paint this cotton candy? Arya lowered her eyes, her voice barely a whisper, yes. It's garbage, Sebastian declared loudly. The room went silent, Chloe snickered in the background. But then, Sebastian leaned in. His lips brushed her ear, the warmth sending a shiver down her spine. But I prefer the one you left on my nightstand, he whispered darkly. Midnight, the parking garage. If you aren't there, I'm coming to the Sterling house to collect you myself. Midnight came. Arya sat in the back of Sebastian's bulletproof Maybach, the white dress pulled around her like a shroud. I want the Sterling family destroyed, she said, her voice devoid of fear. I can give you resources, money, my name, Sebastian said, lighting a cigar. The smoke curled around him, framing him like a demon king. But I don't make bad investments, Arya. What are you offering? Me, she said flatly, and all future proceeds from the artist Valkyrie. Not enough, Sebastian crushed the cigar out. He grabbed her wrist, pulling her crashing into his chest. I want you completely, body and soul. We sign a marriage contract. Until I get bored, you are Mrs. Vance. The Vance estate was a different kind of prison, one made of discipline and iron. You're too weak, Sebastian told her. Your ambition writes checks your body can't cash. He hired the best. Combat instructors, etiquette experts, nutritionists. Arya spent her days sweating in the gym, her muscles burning, transforming from a fragile waif into a warrior. Sebastian was often there, watching, sometimes instructing. The tension between them was thick enough to choke on sweat, heavy breathing, and lingering touches that bordered on violence. He taught her how to walk into a room and own it. He taught her that a single raised eyebrow could do more damage than a knife. But while Arya trained, Sebastian hunted for the truth. He found it in a buried police report. The car crash 10 years ago wasn't an accident. Richard had cut the brake lines to seize the family trust. Worse, the file contained Richard's obsession letters, diaries all detailing a sick, twisted love for Arya's mother. He was projecting that obsession onto Arya. When Sebastian told her, Arya didn't scream. She went to the studio. For hours, she splashed paint onto the canvas, fire, twisted faces, screaming metal. Sebastian found her covered in paint, shaking uncontrollably. He stepped up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his solid chest. Don't cry, he ordered, his voice rough near her ear. Tears are for the weak. We don't cry, Arya. We make them bleed. The Met Gala, the battlefield. Chloe Sterling was supposed to be the star. She stood on the red carpet, clinging to Arya's ex-fiance, bragging to reporters about a new merger. Then, the lights cut out. A single spotlight snapped on at the top of the stairs. Arya stood there. She wore a gown that looked like living flame obsidian fading into deep crimson. Her makeup was sharp, her posture regal. The terrified girl was gone. The queen had arrived. Beside her stood Sebastian Vance, his hand possessively on the small of her back. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. Is that Arya Sterling? Chloe stormed over, her face twisted in ugly rage. Arya, you little bitch. You stole that dress, security. Arrest her. Arya looked down at her cousin, her expression bored. She curled her lip in a smirk that was pure Sebastian. Watch your tone, sister. I'm attending as Mrs. Vance. Sebastian stepped forward, addressing the cameras. More than that, Arya is the lead artist for my new gallery, Inferno. And he paused, looking directly at the lens. Someone tell Richard Sterling that Vance Capital just acquired 51% of his company. It belongs to her now. Chloe lunged, security caught her midair, dragging her away screaming. Richard, watching from the sidelines, collapsed, his face the color of ash. Bankruptcy wasn't enough, Arya wanted ashes. The exhibition, Rebirth, opened 2 weeks later. The centerpiece was a series called The Seven Sins. Each painting was a grotesquely beautiful metaphor for the Sterling family, greed, lust, envy. But the final piece was covered in black velvet. With the elite of New York watching, Arya pulled the cord. The painting was titled The Skid Mark. It was hyper-realistic, the scene of the crash. And in the shattered rearview mirror of the painted car, reflected perfectly, was a young Richard Sterling's face, twisted in malice. Simultaneously, speakers blasted a grainy audio recording. Sebastian's hackers had recovered the impossible. Richard's voice, clear as day, cursing his brother to die. Silence descended, then, sirens. Police swarmed the gallery. As they handcuffed Richard, he lunged toward Arya, foaming at the mouth. You're a curse, just like your mother. You seduced me. Arya stood on the platform, looking down at him like a goddess judging an insect. Save your confessions for hell, uncle. As they dragged him out, chaos erupted. A loyalist from Richard's security detail broke through the crowd, a gun raised. Bang! Sebastian moved faster than thought. He stepped in front of Arya just as the bullet tore through the air. Blood bloomed on his white shirt like a poppy. Sebastian moved faster than thought. He stepped in front of Arya just as the bullet tore through the air. Blood bloomed on his white shirt like a poppy. He looked up at her, face pale, a weak smirk playing on his lips. He reached up, wiping a tear from her cheek with a bloody thumb. "Easy, little fox," he rasped. "I told you ... I'm your shield. This is just a scratch. Tell me you love me, and we'll call it even." 1 year later, the Sterling name had been erased from New York. Chloe was begging on the streets of Queens. Richard had accidentally died in a prison brawl. Arya was no longer a shadow. She was the most sought-after artist in the hemisphere, and the terrifying, beloved matriarch of the Vance dynasty. On a private island in the Caribbean, away from the flashing cameras, a real wedding was taking place, no contracts, no leverage. Arya walked down the aisle, wearing a dress she had designed herself. At the altar, the devil was waiting for her. Sebastian looked healthy, stronger than ever, his eyes softening only for her. Ready to sign another contract, he teased as she took his hands.
Here is story time. Please subscribe and join us.